Hello, Pasadena ISD students. Today we're going to be working with revising registers of language. As you learned in your notes, there are two registers of language that are most common. Formal, and that is when we're speaking professionally or intellectually, and informal, and that's when we're at ease speaking to our friends and family. I'm going to show you how to take a formal register and change it to informal, and that is, of course, to appease your audience if the audience is your friend or family member. And then I'm also going to show you how to take an informal register and revise it so that the language is more formal. And that is, again, if you're speaking to someone like a supervisor or a teacher. Take a look at the first paragraph that's provided. As you can see, there are no contractions, all of the language is standard English, and there are no slang terms or there are no idioms to be found. So what I want to do is think about how I'm going to change each of the sentences to include non-standard English. And again, that includes slang and or idioms. For the first sentence, I changed the language to be informal by adding a contraction and directly addressing my audience. It's hard as heck to move. Ask anybody. So the next consideration that needs to be made is how would I want to say, while there are many reasons why people move, the impact remains the same. So again, in order to become more informal, I decided to include a contraction here, and I also decided to use non-standard English. It don't matter why you choose to move, it's a pain. And we know that the saying is it's a pain in the butt, but for school purposes, I won't put that here, it's a pain. And that is an idiom. We literally don't get a pain in any part of our body when we move for the most part. It's a figurative pain. So I decided to include the idiom to make the language more informal. Next, I have to decide how I want to change the next sentence. The stress of finding more lucrative careers seems worthwhile to many. So what I've decided to do is to say people who move to get more paper. So I'm using an element of slang instead of saying to make more money or to have a more lucrative pay. I'm using paper instead, and that makes it more informal, as well as yet another contraction with paper don't care about the trouble they go through. Okay, so again, the trouble they go through versus the trouble they endure. Okay, so I'm using less sophisticated language as well. Looking at the last sentence where others settle because of the climate, because they can look forward to enjoying the benefits and the comfort, I'm going to say that another way by using informal language. The sentence that I created says a lot of people move for the weather too. Changing zip codes instead of wardrobes works for the most part. So you will notice that there is neither a use of contractions nor is there a slang term. I just used more standard, simple language, works for the most part, instead of saying works overwhelmingly well, which is more formal, sophisticated, mature. Now I'm going to model for you moving from an informal register to a formal register as you'll practice both independently. Let's take a look at the informal register paragraph. The movie Black Panther was lit. I ain't never watched a movie 3 times in the first week. It's got to be one of the best movies I've ever seen. My fave, Death. The dudes were smooth, but the ladies were smoother. Whoever made this movie killed it. Occasionally, you may have been asked by a teacher to revise for language or for tone. This is what your teacher was referring to specifically. When you are speaking to a teacher as your audience or a more professional audience, or you're writing an essay in school, for the most part, you're going to want to avoid slang words like lit and ain't and the contractions and etc. Because again, you want to, depending on your audience, use a more formal register. So let's take a look at another way that we can say that Black Panther was lit. Rather than saying lit, I decided to specify what made Black Panther one of my favorites. So I changed lit to unique storyline, and then I also added that it was one of my favorites of all time. So when I moved to the second sentence to move from informal to formal register, I've already said that it's one of my favorites, so I won't be able to use my fave anyway. I'm going to try to encompass another detail that supports why it's one of the best movies without using an idiom or slang. This sentence was changed to categorize Black Panther as an epic movie, and again, the details are stated using more sophisticated, mature language. It's an epic, and there were admirable special effects and great action. So you can see that there's a change from the less formal register to the more formal register. And then finally, we're looking at the dudes were smooth, but the ladies were smoother. And whoever made this movie killed it. So we're going to change those sentences so that they are more formal. The new sentences read, while the leading men in the movie played their roles well, the female actresses made their tribe seem realistic and powerful. Black Panther's producers and directors deserve accolades for their admirable work. So again, the change stems from replacing the slang dudes with the more formal men and female actresses. And again, changing the idiom killed it to the more formal or sophisticated details, realistic, powerful, deserve accolades, and admirable work are much more formal uses of language than before. Now you are all set to work with your examples of revising formal to informal and then revising informal to formal registers of language. Please feel free to refer back to the example as needed. You've got this in a bag. Good luck. Of course, that was informal language. Bye-bye.